Hi, and welcome back this week. So today we are going to be talking about ego states. And for me, this is something to get your head around at foundation level of TA once you start getting an interest and an appetite for it. Do you want to kick us off with ego states?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is probably the first experience of like TA jargon, getting a bit into the jargon. So let's break the jargon down because first off, ego states, what are they? What does it even mean when we're talking about ego states? And ego states, they're not a physical thing. They're not something that if you were to cut open your brain, you could find the ego states inside it. But instead, they're a metaphor that describe the way that thoughts, feelings, and behaviours are stored. And this is probably the most recognisable part of transactional analysis. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about ego states in TA, the diagram on your screen now, but that is also available in the links as a download. But for those just listening, it's like traffic lights. Jenna described it like this before. I've never thought of it like traffic lights, but once she said it, I was like, oh, it's so obvious. So it's 3 circles stacked on top of each other. And in the top circle, you've got a P, which stands for your parent ego state. In the middle is the A for your adult. And in the C is the child. And Byrne talked about ego states in 2 ways. Our structural ego states, which are like our inside ones, and then our functional, which are our outside. Now, we're going to concentrate more on the functional, but let's just start with the structure, because that's the way that we're made up. And I always think of it like a little bit like our skeletons. Mm-hmm. Like we can't see it, but it's there, it's inside us. So if we start with the parent ego state, within our parent ego state are thoughts and feelings and behaviours from real big people, mm-hmm. from when we were little. It could be your parents, but it could also be other people. It could be your grandparents, whoever it was that cared for you growing up, teachers. If you were a real regular visitor to the local pub as a kid, it could be the pub landlord. Anyone who was an influential big person. All the things that they did are stored in your parent ego state.
And you don't have to be a parent.
Don't have to be a parent. It's not related to, as I say, it could be your parent, but it could be any other big people.
But sorry, you don't have to be a parent.
No. So you don't have to be a parent for it, and neither does the parent ego state have to be.
It's about making sense of those situations and the people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the adult then is concerned with the here and now. That's thoughts, feelings, and behaviours based on right now. And then finally, you've got your child. And in the child ego state are the way that you as a little person made sense of what was going on in the world, the way that you interpreted the things that the big people around you did. It's where we repeat our patterns from our childhood. Mm-hmm. So that's the structural bit. That's the thing that's on the inside. But as I said, we're going to concentrate on the functional parts. And the functional is essentially how we use what we have on the inside. And it's those observable behaviours, the things that we can then see that we do, that other people do. So Jenna is going to take us through the functional part using Susannah Temple's functional fluency model.
I am.
You are.
I'm going to arrange my post-it notes. And so again, there'll be a diagram on the screen of what this looks like. And we'll put a reference as well for Susannah Temple's functional fluency model. And before I get started, I'm just going to highlight about a changing of terms that we might use, because in Susannah Temple's, it talks about structuring parent, whereas Byrne would use critical parent. Yeah. And we had a conversation recently, and I tend to use critical parent. And it wasn't until we had the conversation about what those terms mean and the connotations that you think of when you think about these words. And I don't know, I think I'm going to find it difficult to get out of the habit of using critical parent, because I've used the term for such a long time. I also really like the term structuring parent, and I like the idea of structure and it being an action and working towards a more positive, potentially positive step rather than waggy finger being critical. So I'm going to see what I can do, but I might flip from terms on the videos, but Byrne would use his terms, and if you read writings from him, but other people afterwards have used slightly different words. It's TA, but there's TA proper, TA original, and other people's works as well that we might
end up flipping between. It's also worth mentioning that Byrne had a different name for, he called free child, versus in this model by Susannah Temple, the natural child. Again, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about the same ego state, but it's just different terms.
Yeah, and again, I tend to use free. What
I use natural. Yeah.
So it might even be that we are using different terms in the same video as well.
Yeah,
and that's just something to highlight.
We will try and be consistent, or at least sort of highlight where we've used something different. But yeah,
bear with. I'll edit that out because we said we weren't going to say that. The diagram that's on your screen. So we've got the 3 circles as Becky described, and the top and the bottom one are split in half. So on the left, we have got the structuring parent, and then on the right, we've got the nurturing parent. So we'll start with that one. And thinking about neither is good nor bad. So we can have a good structuring parent, a positive structuring parent, but also a negative structuring parent. And we'll start with structural parent and structuring parent, and it's criticising, bossy, fault finding. And think about the people in your life, or maybe that's you, where you're that person. I am very bossy.
Me too.
Very bossy. If you ask the people around me, maybe they would say that was a negative part, and maybe I would say it was a positive part. So again, our perception of how that the bossiness is. And then we've also got inspiring, directive, firm. Okay, so maybe I'm more directive. Maybe I'll start using that word a little bit more. So have a think about the people in your life who fit those words. And this is just to help. I guess in my mind, I don't like putting people in boxes, but it's almost like, those tech films where they've got the that see-through see-through computer screen, and like and they're just moving things around all the screen.
Oh yeah.
That's almost like what it is, right? Okay, so I'll put that in.
Thinking about like a Black Panther.
Yeah,
they do that. They do a lot of that in there. Yeah,
that's in my head what I'm thinking about doing. Just organise where you see your family members, where you see your friends, where you see the bus driver, whatever the people in your life are. Have a think about where you are and where the people around you are.
But with that, it's worth noting, we change state.
I got really excited then.
Sorry, yeah. We change state constantly throughout the day, don't we? So it might be that when you're with certain people, you notice that you're adopting maybe some more of those negative structuring parent behaviours, whereas with other people, you find it much easier to be the more directive, the more inspiring versus the bossy and fault finding. So we all switch all over the place, all of the time.
And what I'm thinking now is in relationships so I would suggest that my dad is more critical parent towards me, but my little sister, he's more nurturing parent. Mm-hmm. So his 2 daughters bring out a different part of him. And that to me looked quite obvious when I take a step back and look at that behaviour. So we are bringing something out of my dad that he then puts those behaviours with his 2 daughters. And it can be the same situation, same scenario. But one will get a well done, and one might get, you could have done that better. Mm-hmm. So as well as us feeling different, what are we recognising in other people as well in different situations? So that's what it's brought to my mind then about thinking about how it's not just about recognizing our behaviours, but other people's behaviours as well.
Well, and our perceptions on their behaviours.
Yes.
That's a really important thing to highlight, that just because we think that what they're doing is critical parent, that is with all our sort of back stuff that's created our lens of the world that we have. And we'll cover more of this as we go through about how sort of these lenses on the world are created, that then give us our perception for how we are then interpreting things.
And you're right, two people can have two people can go to the shop and say, gosh, you think she was rude?
Yeah.
No, she was fine. I thought she was lovely. But they've had that same interaction. So yeah, no, you're absolutely spot on there with the perception of that. Back to Susannah Temple's functional fluency model. If we then go to the other side of the parent and we have a look at marshmallowing, smothering, overindulgent, inconsistent. And then the positive to that, nurturing, cherishing, understanding, and compassionate. And again, think about those words and what part of us would we like to see more of, and what part of us are we seeing a lot of that maybe we're thinking, I maybe need to work on that.
I recall during one of our TA sort of lessons that the tutor had said to us that there's research, and I don't have the research to hand, I don't have the name of who it is that's done the research to hand, but that research showed that marshmallowing parent, so those ones who literally they smother you, they do everything for you, were actually more damaging to children than the critical part of the structuring parent, so of that negative structuring parent, that marshmallowing was actually worse for child development than the punitive and fault finding, which I thought was fascinating. And I'm not going to lie, it made me feel slightly better because, through the work that I've done on myself, I've realised I have spent an awful lot of time in that more negative side of structuring parent. I'm really conscious of that now, and it's something that I really have worked to stay in that positive. But yeah, it's incredible because I think we often think that, oh no, but I'm really looking after them and that makes me really kind and that makes me really caring. And actually, it makes you quite disempowering. You're taking away their ability to be able to do things for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And in last week's video, I talked about having a patient who wanted a bottle of water, and I can pass it to them, but is that helping them when they are discharged and they go home? So if we go back to those terms, we could be slightly smothering and I'll get you water, I'll sort your pillow out, I'll raise the bed, I'll do this and I'll do that, and I'll put your hands over the blankets and I'll put your hands under the blankets, and you can get to that stage of smothering. But then what happens, because we're not then considering, we're getting our needs met as much as that our needs to be caring, as much as the individual's quite happy, they're not having to do too much that day. But then from a physio perspective, if they need to move out of bed, if they need to get their own water, we're not doing them any favours at all.
Yeah.
We're not building that resilience and building, whatever muscle memory they had or they need to rebuild now, how can we get that back for them? So I guess really thinking about why are we doing this? Who are we helping? Who are we serving? Whose needs are we meeting? And I think some people can fall in the trap. And I always remember thinking, because you're in a bay of 6, so we've got 6 patients and they've probably got some family members. So for me to say to somebody, let me help you get it yourself, everyone around me perceives me as not caring. But actually, no, I really do. But I care about what happens to you afterwards as much as I care about what happens to you in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, and also, it's quicker for me to get the bottle of water for you than it is.
Of course it is, yeah.
For me, it takes time for me to supervise and support and, help that thing. But, and we'll get into this in another video, but the social and the psychological bit of socially, am I giving into a bit of peer pressure as well? Because I'm not able to carry all those eyes looking on me. I'm not able to hold that discomfort in the benefits of this lady that I'm getting her water long term. So we'll go back to adult in Susannah Temple's functional fluency model. And we've got, so the terms that we've got on this model are alert, aware, grounded, rational. Are you any of them?
Sometimes.
Rational. Ooh. I'd like to think so.
And when we talk about adult, you know, if we were thinking about a conversation that we would maybe have, you know, between adults, it can often seem like a little bit robotic. Oh, that's the way that I think people can perceive adult. Jenna, what time is it? It's 3:10, and that's it. That's end of. Not you know, we're not moving into other. Oh, why don't you get a watch? If you had a watch, you'd be able to tell your own time. And we'll look more at these things when we look at transactions in one of the future videos. How you know, where we intend a message to go out and the message that we get back can be quite different. But yeah, adult, very much operating from the here and now. You're acting in a way that's appropriate for your age. You're using the resources that you've got available to you at your age and at the time that you're in now, with the knowledge that you have now, and you're making decisions and you are behaving without taking in influences from those past ego states, because parent and child are both concerned with the past. Adult, very much here and now.
Yeah, I quite like the adult. I do quite like the adult space. Trying to think rational, and I think that some of my better decisions are maybe in the adult space that I've made. And we'll go to child. So we have got adaptive child. So we have got here cooperative, sociable, assertive, considerate. And then we have got compliant, resistant, anxious, rebellious, submissive. I think one of my natural positions is the adaptive child. And I think that having worked with TA for quite a while, I've got out of that mode, as in that being almost my default setting, and I will adapt to the world around me, and I maybe won't use my voice, and I'll be quite submissive. Yeah. And it makes me think about my tummy, like my tummy flipping, and that kind of, am I going to get told off?
Oh, yep.
That's what it makes me feel when I think about the adaptive child. And I think it's interesting that we've got anxious as well as a term there. And I think for me, my interpretation of that is that worry about getting told off. Will I get told off? Will it be today? Will it be as bad as it was yesterday? Will it be okay? Is the other person in a better mood? Because that might influence my day. I think that's what I'm thinking of when I think about the seeing the word anxious. And then on the opposite side, natural child, we have got, I'm getting excited now, you can hear it in my tone, because this is where I love to spend a lot of time. Spontaneous, creative, expressive, zestful. I've never described myself as that, but I think I might start from now.
I can see you've been very zestful.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments below how you would use the term zestful in your day-to-day life. And then we've got immature, egocentric, reckless, selfish.
Oof.
Yeah.
But how fine is that line between the two, right? It really can be. You know, when you think you're being zestful, but are you being zestful and not aware of your surroundings, and you're skipping across the field, and you're about to skip across onto the road because you're moving into that reckless part because you're not actually taking into account what's going on around you. You're too busy being zestful, for example. You know, with all these things, it's these ego states. It's so easy to flip between the positive and the negative, just almost, I see it's just pushing it that little bit too far.
Yeah.
And we end up on the opposite side of the behaviour.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we're not saying is that one of these are good or bad, that it's about having that balance. And we discussed before about terms and the term integrated adult and integrating adult, and using parts of those that are appropriate for the situation. And one of the conversations that we had in the process of this was around money. And I think thinking about what did the parents around you, what were the messages around you, and how did you make sense of what was going on around money? What were the conversations like? And for me, my experience is people fall out over money. So I will, if we're going out and it's rounds or whatever, I will be the one that says, right, are we paying for our own? Are we splitting? How are we working this? Are we doing rounds? And because of that discomfort that I've had before with money, I will be the one just to go, right, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Because my experience has been fallouts. So I try and prevent that from happening by having that like conversation right at the beginning of the night, right, what are we doing? Everyone knows where they stand. And then it's out in the open, and then we can just get on enjoying the night with whatever people have decided. Because I don't want it to get to the stage where it's like 10 o'clock at night that I can stay up till 10 o'clock at night drinking. Listen to me. But where it's late in the day and people are starting to get frustrated because maybe somebody hasn't got an extra round or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's been my experience. And back to the messaging, what you were saying about how we made sense, I think money is one that people can think about because we've all got such different relationships and attitudes around money.
Yeah.
So that's my kind of part with that. I'm just going through my notes.
No, that's okay. I think just to expand ever so slightly on the integrated adult idea, because that's a part of the theory that I really love. And when we were having our supervision session with Tryon, I brought up how when I first came across TA many, many, many years ago on a leadership and management course, and I've seen TA used on so many different leadership courses because it looks like a really easy to understand thing, this idea of parent, adult and child and thinking about how you're talking to people. But it's often sort of put in there and then explained by people who don't understand TA. And so what had happened on this course was them saying, adult is where you want to be. So that's, we don't want to be acting like a critical parent. We don't want to be acting like a structuring parent. We don't want to be acting like a reckless child. We want to be thinking from the here and now, which is correct to a certain extent. But what they're missing out is Byrne's idea of the integrated adult. And the integrated adult, because when they said that, let me go back slightly. When they said that, I remember thinking, but how boring will that be? Like, if everything that we do is very much just, what's the time, Jenna? It's 3:05. Like,
or telling jokes.
Yeah, like
and
jokes
then someone like dissecting the joke. And it's like, well, it's not funny now, is it?
Yeah, that would be gone like from my world. And I was like, well, that's really boring. And I felt a little bit like I was slipping into that sort of natural child state of thinking, well, I don't want to do that. Rebelling against it. But what they missed is this idea of the integrated adult, where what we do is we take the positive parts, and it's just the positive parts from our parent and our child ego states, and we use them on purpose within the here and now, and we use them in an appropriate way. And we're not being drawn into old behaviours. It's not where it feels like someone is trying to put you into a child position, and so you immediately go into adapted child, and I'm really sorry, because then that would be probably more on the negative side of the adapted child, that you sort of diminish yourself to meet the needs of others. But no, instead you can take the positive parts of the structuring parent who's able to inspire and direct. You can take the positive parts of the nurturing parent, who's able to care and give me some other
Be
words.
compassionate.
Be compassionate, and that we can take those fun elements from our child ego states and use them all as appropriate in the here and now.
And that sounds so light.
And that, how much better does that sound than just having to be, and I can hear myself like go, and I feel like I'm, going
just
into
light and flowy. And...
Yeah, into that sort of, natural child of, that sounds so much better, that we can still have fun with it. It can still be appropriate to direct people at times, and that we don't just have to talk like robots, just from the adult.
Yeah. And I would say that I spent a lot of time in nurturing parent because I didn't want to be like my mum.
Right.
I didn't want to be a critical parent. And actually, through conversations, I was discounting part of me. I was discounting that feeling, that emotion, that conversation that needed to be had. I was discounting a whole part of me because socially, what was I getting from being a nurturing parent over what was I getting from being a critical parent? So I would overcompensate by doing more for other people and helping, and what am I trying to say? Doing more for other people at a cost to myself. And realising that, I was discounting that whole part of me because of my past experience. And we talk about healthy ways to communicate, and that's not, you can still be a critical parent in a healthy way and communicate in a healthy way. Whereas my experience wasn't in a healthy way. So I didn't want to be that bit. But at that time, not realising, being aware that I didn't want to be this, I wanted more to be like that. But not realising, well, actually, I can be in, maybe if the term structuring parent had come to me earlier, maybe I would have accepted that a little bit more and been like, right, okay, yes, I can be in that space and that's okay. And I don't need to give myself a hard time about it. So spending a lot of time nurturing other people, but then maybe not nurturing myself and not using my voice and not using healthy ways of communication. And so socially seen as being positive, oh, Jen, she does this, she does that. But at what cost to me was that?
Oh, what a question.
Yeah.
At what cost to you was it?
Ooh, yeah. Ooh. It's made me take a deep breath. and that's really interesting, but that's only through having conversations with other people and starting to make sense through conversations, because sometimes we can have these things in our head and we're not wanting to be vulnerable and open up to other people. And we had a conversation last night about counselling and why, what is it about people who maybe would benefit but choose not to have it, and what's holding that person back. And some people will never ever want it, and possibly that's me putting my values onto other people. But I believe that through conversations we can make improvements and getting out of our head. And I know we've shared a few WhatsApp voice notes where we then have idea A and then you reply with an idea B and then we make sense of it in C.
Yeah.
But it was only through that process of being okay with getting it wrong and things and those conversations. I've gone off on a tangent about conversations now, but I think it's important to make sense of it, to go back, because it was only through that I realised about the nurturing parent. Swinging it right back now. So I'm right where I started. I'm going to check my notes. So I'm just going to check my notes, make sure I've covered everything that I wanted to.
No, that's okay.
I'm half listening.
You're half listening. That's okay. So what I would really encourage, Jen said when she started going through Susannah Temple's functional fluency model, have a think, where is it that you recognise your behaviours? Where do you see yourself? But as you're doing that, I would really encourage you to do that with nothing more than curiosity and kindness to yourself, because it's so easy otherwise, isn't it, to look and think, oh, oh my goodness, like I've been so horrible because all of those things that I do fall into the negative parts of being a structuring parent. Or, oh my goodness me, I can't believe it. Like I'm always really reckless. I can't believe that I've been operating from that natural child mode all the time. And it's too easy to do that, to then use when we're building our self-awareness and when we're starting to think about changing our behaviours, to use the things that we learn as a stick to beat ourselves with. And I would really, really strongly encourage you to try your very best to not do that, to just notice. There's nothing you can do about what you did before. That's the main thing, right? And if chances are, if you are listening to this, it's going to be because you are wanting to make a change. So, and it's that idea of once you know better, you can do better. So don't be feeling bad about the way that you've operated from previously, about those behaviours that you recognise in yourself, because you will have some of the negative ones. Because as I said earlier on, we all are like this, like all over in terms of ego state positions throughout the day. Will change all the time. So you will find that you've done had some of those negative behaviours. We still have some of those negative behaviours. And as we've said in the first episode, we're just that little bit further along in our journey. It still happens. We still fall into it. But now we can notice it. Once we can notice it, we can then do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we were going to share some examples of this. Wait, let me check first. When you've checked your notes,
yeah,
are you good?
Yeah. No, I think we've got everything. Just wanted to make sure that we that I covered everything.
Pretty sure.
This is my checking my notes phase. Yeah. No, just wanted to make sure that we covered everything. So yeah, the examples.
Yeah. So go on, take it away.
Okay, so one of I guess I could say my default was adaptive child, nurturing parent. And at the moment, I can find and this is where it comes about the perception. So I can find myself occasionally with my husband, an adaptive child. We will be walking the dogs and I will think, oh, maybe the dogs have gone a little bit too far ahead and maybe we need to recall them, give them some force, give them some treats, just to keep them getting used to coming back to us. And he seems to have a wider range where he thinks it's okay for the dogs to go before needing to call them back. And he's got the whistle.
Oh.
And he's got the treats. So I find myself through no conversation or body language of my husband. My husband's just like, do, 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 do. I'm walking in the woods. And I'm there feeling like I can't say anything, feeling like I can't suggest, maybe we call the dogs back because I don't want to get told off. I don't want him to say, no, I'm doing this and I'm okay and they're okay. And I don't want that to happen. So I find myself, and this is what you were saying about old ways, old habits, like that's still with me, that feeling of I don't want to get told off. What could I do about it? I could take my own bloody whistle.
Take your own whistle?
That wouldn't happen. Because then I would be able to call the dogs back, have treats in my pocket. So when I think they're going too far, I can call them back. And when he feels that he can call them back as well. Because we're not confusing them then, because we're both the dog owners and we've both got the same whistle and blah, blah, blah. So that was my kind of personal example of that's my perception and that's what I'm making sense. Because in the past, I would have gone to make a suggestion and I would have got told off for it. And I wouldn't have wanted to feel like that again. But there are things in my adult that I can do to stop that from happening. Or I could even just ask Rob.
Yep, another option, yeah.
Because he hasn't done anything.
No.
And I want to make that really clear. He hasn't done anything. This is me feeling this and me making sense of this. So it was really right that you pointed out about our perceptions. Because he has not told me off. This is just in my head. This is just feelings in my tummy. And there are things that I could do to prevent that from happening. One might be take my own whistle out, and two, to have a conversation with Rob. So that's my example of what is happening right now as an adult. And I want to be clear that you don't have to be a child to be an adaptive child.
No.
But as an adult, that is the ego state that I find myself in occasionally, not all the time, but occasionally in that situation. And as an adult, with the information that I've got around me, these are the options available. There's probably some more as well, but these are the options that are available. But I didn't do. And me taking responsibility. It's not Rob making me feel like this because he hasn't done anything. I'm feeling like this, and I could do something about feeling different.
Yeah, love it. So I'll give a professional example then.
Go for it.
So I work a lot with leaders and with people who are transitioning into sort of their first leadership role. And leadership can be like a real funny old space, because suddenly you're in charge of people. People are in your charge. And what do you do with them? And so I see people flipping in various different parent ego states. Some of them will take on that real negative structuring parent. I'm the boss and I tell you what to do and you will do it or else. Or I'm the boss and your work is absolutely terrible. What on earth were you thinking? I can't believe you thought that was acceptable. Go away and do it better. Do it my way. I don't want to hear what you've got to say because my way is right because I'm in charge. And people do that a lot.
Yeah. Especially the my way one.
Like, yeah, it's do it my way. But you also get the ones who can be in the marshmallowing side of that nurturing parent who struggle to delegate. I'll do it all. I'll take it all. Oh, you're finding that really difficult. Don't worry. I'm the team leader. So I'll take that on for you and I'll make that easier. What can I do to make everything better? So I'll take it all on. I'll smother you. I'll make sure that everything's all right with you. They end up then running around like a headless chicken. They're working the 70-hour weeks, but they're marshmallowing the people that they work with. And instead thinking about, okay, how could you take on the more positive aspects of perhaps being the structuring parent, bringing that into your adult, so from the here and now, to see how actually you can get your team to do tasks that you want them to do, but in a much more positive way, not just because you're in charge and that's what you're telling them to do.
And it must be done my way.
And yes.
I struggle with that.
Yes, you be quiet. You be quiet, child. But this is what happens, isn't it? We see a little bit like you feeling like you're in your adapted child. You're almost looking for someone to come to you from parent. And this will become much clearer as we move into transactions and you'll see more what we mean there. But it's the same happens when we're in parent. We're looking for a response from an adapted child. Like, I'm critical parent. I'm telling you what to do. I'm so sorry, Mr. or Mrs. Boss. I'll get it right next time. Yeah, good. Make sure you do. And
we should maybe cover that in the next video.
Yeah. Sounds like a good place to start.
Next week, transactions.
So we'll look into that in some more detail. But, between now and then, as Jenna said earlier on, just to reiterate, just notice what's going on with you. And I would really encourage you to look at you. It's so much easier to identify the behaviours in other people first, or your perception. I'm going to really sort of hammer that one home, the idea of that's your perception of their behaviour. So don't forget that. But it's really easy to spot it in other people. But if we want to make a change, we need to be able to spot it in ourselves. So where is it that you're spending your time? Have another little look at the diagram. Have another little look at the words that are in there that describe the way that you might be acting in the different ego states. And then, break it down a little bit further. Who are you with when you act from your negative critical parent? Who are you with when you're acting from the positive part of an adapted child, for example? What are you doing? Where do you feel good You know, where is it that you're like, oh yeah, I feel at my best when I'm operating from this place? And just notice it again with kindness and curiosity, and with nothing more than that. And in the hope that if you decide, I don't really like where I'm spending my time in this ego state, I don't like the way that I'm interacting with that person, I don't like it when this behaviour comes out of me. Okay, well then that's where we can start to look to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, like you say, it is more difficult to hold that mirror up against yourself.
Oh.
Tune in next week. We're going to be talking about transactions.
Yep.
And let us know in the comments below, where are you spending most of your time and where would you like to spend more time? Thank you very much for watching. I'm Jenna.
Oh, you are Jenna, and I'm talking over you. Thank you, and I'm Becky.